Welcome to the Relay Video Podcast from Dementia Researcher and ISTAART.
Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Maura Malpetti. I am a Race Against Dementia Researcher Fellow, and I work at the University of Cambridge. I'm the program chair of the Frontotemporal and Related Disorders PIA, and today I'm delighted to be talking with Beth Eyre. Hi Beth.
Hi Maura, how are you?
Fine, very excited to be here and interviewing you. So can I start by asking you to introduce yourself and tell us which PIA you are involved with?
As you said, I'm Beth, and I'm actually kind of associated with the Vascular Cognitive Disorders PIA. So I'm a researcher at the University of Sheffield. I'm kind of between things at the moment because I have just submitted my PhD thesis. Yay.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm waiting to defend. But I have started a postdoc position. So I'm kind of staying in the same sort of area, but learning some new methods and kind of still staying in that the vascular contributions to dementia sort of region, which is really exciting. So I kind of came across the vascular PIA over a year ago now, I think. I've done a couple of things with the Alzheimer's Association and ISTAART. So they have a conference called Neuroscience Next. I kind of got involved with that. I went on their committee. That was super exciting. Lots of opportunities for early career researchers there. And then I was also super lucky to be selected as an ISTAART ambassador last year. So that gave me a real good insight into all the different PIAs. I got to go to the PIA day and kind of be a volunteer there, which was great. And I went to some of the vascular sessions, and I thought, oh, this is really exciting stuff. I'm really interested in this area. Obviously, I've been researching it for a little bit, but I'm definitely no expert yet. So I think it's really cool that you can kind of join even when you don't feel like you're an expert, and you can kind of have opportunities to kind of get involved. And then this year I was selected as onto the executive committee as the student postdoc representative. So that's kind of why I'm here chatting to you.
Oh, that's excellent. And maybe before going into a bit more into your research and what your PIA is doing, maybe you can just mention for who is listening how people can apply for this ambassador scheme. Because I think it's a very interesting one and maybe people are not aware of that.
Yeah, so the ambassador scheme, I think it started a couple of years ago, but over the past years, it's really kind of developed into this whole year-long program. And to apply, I think the application's usually open, I don't know about the dates, but it's usually February time, I think. And they open, and on the questions, it might ask you kind of why you want to be an ambassador, what you think you can bring to the role. It might want to give some examples of kind of things you've done. But they really just want people to kind of show their enthusiasm for ISTAART and kind of their research area. It's not about like how many papers you've got or all the science. It's about you and kind of what you can bring to the role, which I think is really nice, because a lot of the things sometimes in academia are all about what's your H index, but this is actually about like you, and you get to be you, which is fantastic. And then kind of as part of the program, you get to go to the main Alzheimer's Association conference, the AAIC and yearly conference, annual conference. And you get to kind of wear your purple shirt and kind of be in the face of the role and help out in sessions, meet people from all around the world. So you get to meet other ambassadors from around the world, which is super exciting. I met some people last year and we've all stayed in contact. I've visited some of them in their countries, which has been great. And then kind of throughout the year, there's also other opportunities for you to kind of do other conferences and just network with people who are either at your level or above. And it kind of just, I think it opens the doors to kind of give you the confidence to apply for certain things. Because I don't think I'd have applied for the executive committee role if I'd not kind of been exposed, I guess, to like the association, to ISTAART. So I think it's a great kind of like stepping stone.
Oh, that sounds like an excellent community. So all students out there, postdocs, please look at the ISTAART website to hear more about this. Excellent, thank you. So perhaps we can start a bit more, like going back to the research, and you can tell us a bit more what is about your own research and how it came about that you became a dementia researcher.
Yeah, thank you. So I started my PhD back in 2019, so a couple of years ago now. It feels like a very long time ago. A lot has happened since then. And my project is kind of looking at blood flow changes in Alzheimer's disease. And I'm quite interested in how blood flow may change in Alzheimer's disease. And I'm specifically interested in how specific proteins that build up in the brain in Alzheimer's, such as amyloid beta, how that can impact sort of brain blood flow. And a kind of another avenue of my work has been looking at comorbidities. So when people have more than one kind of illness or disease at the same time. So I've been quite interested in heart disease and how that can impact the vasculature, like brain blood vessels and blood flow, and also kind of how Alzheimer's and atherosclerosis, so heart disease, can interact. So that's been really exciting to kind of research. And I kind of came to dementia research because I've always been quite interested in the brain. And I think, as most people probably do know, or know of someone who has been impacted by a brain disease that can lead to dementia. And I think there's just so much more research that is needed in the area. We still don't have any treatments that can like stop or like stop the progression or just halt the disease like in its tracks. Like obviously we've had some exciting stuff this year with some potential new treatments. Obviously we still need a lot more research into those, and are they going to be available to people? Are they going to be expensive and things like that? So I'm kind of in an area where we're looking to see if increasing blood flow can potentially aid clearance of the proteins, which can lead to the symptoms of dementia. So I think it's a really exciting, interesting area to be in, and hopefully because it's quite a big area at the moment, which is really exciting. There seems to be lots of things going on, lots of new kind of research outgoings and things. So hopefully in the near future, we'll have some more treatments available for people, because obviously at the moment there just doesn't seem to be that yet, but I think everyone's quite hopeful.
Oh, excellent, super interesting area. So like, could I ask you if there are some people in the audience who are more curious about this topic? How can we improve our blood flow, for example? There are some aspects that people could take care of their lifestyle that you'd suggest, for example. I think is a big factor maybe.
Yeah, so I don't know when the paper came out, but it was something like, I think it was in the Lancet, and it was like 40% of dementia can be preventable. And a lot of these factors that were preventable were like lifestyle factors, so like healthy diet, exercising, keeping a lower blood pressure, limiting your drinking, having hearing checks was actually found to be really important because there's links between between limited hearing and resulting in later dementia. Sleep was a massive one. I love to sleep, so I find sleep research super interesting. So yeah, that was another big one. Air pollution and things like that. So, and I think a lot of the charities as well are really starting to talk about those things and kind of just inform people, because a lot of people aren't aware, and how you can't be aware if you're not told, right? If we're not getting the science and kind of promoting the research that we all do, it's really important that we do communicate that to people, because it is really important, and you can't make a change unless you know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And related to that, I know that you are, like, I don't know if it is the right term, but you are a good influencer in that term. So you are involved with a lot of public engagement. Like how this work also related to the PIA? Are you active in the communication part of your PIA, or is more like something that you do as a hobby and like raising awareness about dementia?
Yeah, so I don't, in the PIA, I'm not actually the communications person, but that would probably be something I'd be looking at into the future, because you don't just have to do one position. I'll talk about that a bit more into the podcast. You can do multiple positions, which is really good. But the Vascular Cognitive Disorders have a Twitter account, so I'm always retweeting from that. I'm always retweeting from ISTAART. I know there's a couple of ISTAART alumni who do a lot of tweeting and Instagram posts about ISTAART, which is great because we want to kind of be attracting early career researchers in, and there's a lot of early career researchers who have science accounts on Instagram who they're kind of for fun. They do a lot of communication about their work and kind of what they're involved in, which is great. But yeah, maybe the communications thing will be in a couple of years' time.
Well, we'll be here to see your next steps. And what do you think, going back to research, what do you think are the hot topic, the exciting areas of your field at the moment, and how you think also your PIA can contribute to this hot topic, or also developing, the field?
I guess who you're asking for the hot topics kind of just depends what they're interested in. So these are kind of what I'm interested in. But I know the PIA as a whole are interested in them because we do have things going on which kind of relate to them. So for me, the first thing is comorbidities. As I mentioned, it is kind of part of my own research area. But I think, especially when we're thinking about the models of Alzheimer's research or the brain diseases that cause dementia, a lot of the preclinical, really early research was kind of done in these really pure models. So it was like just genetic Alzheimer's disease and things like that. But when you think of Alzheimer's in life, I like to say it doesn't really happen in a vacuum. People usually don't just have Alzheimer's, they have maybe high blood pressure or heart disease or other comorbidities. And lots of the comorbidities that people do have are related to the vasculature. And so with the vascular PIA, I think it's super important that we are kind of looking at those comorbidities and kind of in our research, when we're doing the research, is maybe including those comorbidities. Because I mean, I'm from a psychology background, and a lot of the studies are very specific, like subject groups. And I think it's really important that we're kind of like opening that out, I guess, to make sure that we are kind of including all these comorbidities, because that's going to be more relatable and translatable to when we hopefully find treatments, right? So that's the comorbidities aspect. And kind of what the PIA is doing with that is we have a number of working groups, and our working groups we kind of work to make papers, sort of thing. So we get anyone can kind of join the working group who's part of the PIA. So you can be early career, you can be more senior, and it's a really good way to kind of get people with different expertise, different career stages together, kind of working on one document where there's a gap in the research. So I'm currently in one with a number of people from our PIA, and it's about like models and mechanisms of like vascular cognitive disorders. And we talk about like brain vasculature, all the way to omics methods, to comorbidities, and kind of we're always thinking about how we can translate all of our different models. So it's kind of a work group to bring together, learning about all the models, kind of what we know from all these models and how we can then try and translate things. So that's a really cool working group that's on at the moment. And in that, I kind of mentioned about omics. I am not an omics researcher, I must say, and I'm just kind of getting interested in it, but I will definitely leave that to the experts. It's very complicated. But another hot topic in our area is the methods we can use to research the vasculature. So there's like transcriptomics, things like that, like genomics, and lots of studies this year have kind of come out looking at, I think it's like RNA sequencing of specific cells of the vasculature, because the vasculature is super complex, lots of different cell types, and in order for us to kind of treat disorders of the vessels, we need to understand the vessels. So I think those sort of research methods are really exciting, and they can just kind of giving us a molecular understanding of the vessels can hopefully give us ideas of where to target treatments and things like that. And then also my final kind of hot topic for me, and definitely the PIA, because there's again another working group, is kind of clearance mechanisms of the brain. So in Alzheimer's disease, we do think that the clearance of the proteins that build up is impacted. So we kind of get more proteins accumulating in the brain, and we also have issues with getting rid of those proteins. And so a lot of research areas are kind of looking at how can we get rid of these proteins? How can we wash away these proteins from the brain? And by washing away these proteins, can we increase cognitive scores? Can we reduce the amyloid plaque? Will it protect our vasculature? So I think that's another really interesting area. It's also very interesting because nobody's decided which clearance pathway is the right one. There's loads of like debate about it, which I find really interesting. But we have another working group, which is all about clearance pathways. And they are working on a manuscript at the moment. And I think if I'm correct, I think they're wanting to submit very soon. So very exciting. Yeah, we do have manuscripts coming out quite a lot. I know we've just had one accepted for publication about a clinical trial and hypertension, I think I'm correct in saying. So yeah, very exciting, PIA. Loads of working groups to join, whatever your interests are. You can join more than one if you want. You don't have to join any. You can kind of just see what comes out of them and maybe decide to join things in the future. I think that's what's really nice about the PIA is it's definitely, there's a lot going on in it. I think I would say I was really surprised when I joined and how many options there were for me to kind of get involved, which was nice.
Yeah, like it sounds like a very interesting PIA and very active PIA with a lot of working group, a lot of interest. So like maybe you can mention a bit more how is the structure of this PIA, if there is a committee, because like you mentioned this working group, but there is a committee that overlook the working groups. There are leaders in the working groups. How is it structured?
Yeah, so I think as most PIAs have, there's like an executive committee to kind of oversee the PIA as a whole and all the operations. And on that executive committee, you kind of have a chair, a vice chair, then a programs chair. I think you said you were a programs chair. There's a communications chair who do all the kind of like talking about it on like social media and kind of just talking to everyone about what's going on in the PIA. And then you have like executive committee members at different career stages. Then you have the student and postdoc trainee members, one of those what I am. And then what I think is really good about the organisation of the PIAs is that you also have the past chairs as part of the executive committee. So it's kind of a really good way to kind of make sure the rollover happens quite well so people kind of know what's going on. And then with these working groups, I think how they run is they kind of get an idea of, they think this is a new hot topic, let's look into that. And then people volunteer to be on that working group. And then within that, people decide to take up another role on that. So there might be someone who does the minutes, there might be a leader of that. And the leaders of these working groups can be early career researchers. I think it was last year it was published, but there was like an early careers perspective from our vascular cognitive disorders PIA, all about kind of like the early career perspective on vascular cognitive disorders, and that was led by an early career researcher. So it's great not only for people who've been around in the field for longer, but it's great for like incoming people who want to develop their networks and see how it works working with people from all around the world on a paper, because that's really exciting. It's something you probably wouldn't get to do if you weren't part of a PIA.
That's a very good opportunity for all early career researcher out there interested in this topic. Very excellent. And so it seems that you have been quite productive as a PIA in the last year with all these working group papers coming out as well. What are the main plans for next year, if you can reveal some of them?
Yeah, so like I say, I'm quite new, so I only started joining the executive committee meetings back in, I think it was May. So I've kind of got like a bit of an insight into kind of what happened the past year and kind of some of our ideas for the future. But I think the main thing is just to kind of keep the momentum going, because they seem like the group has great momentum. Like you said, it's super active. We've got loads of different working groups. And I think the hope is that the models and mechanisms working group, that we can start writing our paper and hopefully get that out maybe next year, I think we said. And then, yeah, and maybe keep applying for, when it comes on to AAIC, applying for like focus sessions and things like that. We constantly put on webinars. I think even just this year, just as an example of a couple, we had webinars about about white matter hyperintensities, kind of what causes them. And then we had sessions like a deeper dive into those. We also had sessions about clearance and kind of how clearance pathways are in the brain. So there's constantly things going on throughout the year. So I think the hope is that we continue to do webinars and make sure that they're like everyone can get those, especially through ISTAART, and just to continue to kind of work on those working groups and get our PIA out there at the annual conference.
Yeah, and you mentioned webinars, so where people can sign up for these, and if there are recordings, I think there is a established method for all PIAs, but maybe you can tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so with the webinars, so you usually get, if you join the PIA, you can join the PIA, go onto the ISTAART website, which has been newly renovated. Lovely. So if you go onto the website, you can get access to all the PIAs, but obviously you want to go all the way to the bottom, to the Vascular Cognitive Disorders PIA, and join ours. And then through that, once you've joined those, you'll start to get information from the PIA about maybe webinars that are happening, or even the weekly newsletters you get from ISTAART will have information about grants, webinars that are happening, and you can click on those, you can register for them, and then you'll be sent the links, and they're all free. They're also kind of shown on Twitter, so when they're happening, and you can again register for them using the links on Twitter. And I'm pretty sure that the videos for those stay up, and you can access those after the webinar. So we do have like educational ones, and we also have ones about journals. So I think that's it's a great tool, I think, for anyone who's either new to the area or just kind of wants to solidify the knowledge a bit more.
I agree. It's a fantastic resource that is online and open to everyone. And also now the membership for students is free, so I mean, it's excellent. But you mentioned the hot word of AAIC, which stands for Alzheimer Association International Conference. So are you going to the conference? Are you presenting? Your PIA is organizing something?
Yeah, so excitingly, the PIA has a lot going on at the conference this year, but very sadly, I can't go.
Oh.
Yeah, so because my viva is very soon after, so I'm defending the PhD, so it's a very good reason for me not going, but it's a massive shame because I loved the conference last year. It was a great way to meet lots of different people and kind of really diversify my network, which is great for all researchers, but especially early career researchers. I think it's really important. But yeah, so the PIA has quite a lot going on. So they have an ISTAART immersive session titled Evaluating the Human Vasculature for Vascular Cognitive Impairment of Dementia. So that's on Friday. It's like a whole session on the 14th of July. So it's before the main conference. So yeah, if you're interested in the vasculature and vascular cognitive disorders, I think that's a really exciting one for you to go to. They also have the PIA Day. I mentioned that I think it's the day before the conference starts. There's a whole day just for the professional interest areas, and you get to see kind of what's going on in the PIAs and meet people from the PIAs who you might have been working with for the whole year and not met them in person, or just from other PIAs too, because everyone's kind of in the same area. So that's always on the Saturday before. So they've got a session of that. So you'll be able to see some of the work, and I think it's a panel discussion. So that's going to be exciting. They were also, the PIA were successful in getting a focused research session, and I'm pretty sure this is at the actual day, at the actual conference, main conference. And this, I think, is about the incidence, pathogenesis, and clinical implications of amyloid-related imaging abnormalities, so ARIA. And then there was also a successful perspective session. And this was about closing the sex or gender gap in dementia, and then honing in on the vasculature, really focusing on that. So there's some really exciting things going on at the conference. Very sad that I won't be able to attend. But I'll be able to kind of catch up, because if you're an ISTAART member, I think you can get access to quite a lot of things online. So even if people aren't able to go, they should be able to have access to some of these things, which is very exciting for everyone.
Well, it's very sad that you will not be there, but we look forward to seeing you next year as a doctor So yeah, good luck with the Viva. I guess a lot of people that are listening to this podcast, maybe they are considering to join the PIA and other PIAs, and maybe they are interested in this field. Maybe you could mention, give an example, especially for people that are not involved in this field, of your daily work and daily job, how your day as a dementia researcher in this field looks like.
So kind of what I do on a daily basis and how that maybe relates to the PIA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm I do lots of research in Alzheimer's disease and looking at kind of clearance and blood flow. So how my research kind of relates to the PIA is that I'm quite directly related to it, I would say. Obviously, I'm quite interested in the vasculature and things like that. But when I first started, I definitely didn't really have much of an understanding. I was very new to the area. And I think actually joining the PIA early would have been really good for me, because I would have been able to look at the webinars and get the educational videos and kind of see how that relates to my work. And I think also by starting your network early, you can maybe think about future careers and things like that. And by joining the PIA, you, like I said, because there's on the committee or just within the whole PIA, it's bringing together really similar focused people who everyone's kind of got some interest. You don't have to be an expert, you just might be interested in the vasculature, or you might be part of another PIA or another research area, but you might be thinking, oh, I think the vascular could be an interesting topic to maybe kind of go into. And I think by joining the PIA, you can kind of see some of the main work that goes on, and you might be able to create your own collaborations from it. And I know there's definitely people within our PIA who have started collaborations. The networking is great for early career researchers. And like I say, you get the opportunity to work, if you want to, on a committee with people who are maybe professors, they might head up a school or something like that. And you wouldn't really have that opportunity without the PIA, I would say. I don't think there's another kind of society or sort of group where you can do that, working on such close levels, and kind of you're getting as much out of it as other people are. And I think that's what's really exciting. And yeah, just massive opportunities for career development. Especially with those working groups, if you have the time. Obviously, I know everyone's time is quite limited, but if you do have the time, you can really take a massive role in those working groups. And if you're getting a paper out of it, that's really exciting. But it's not just a paper, it's getting that network out of it and kind of working globally as well. I think that is the point of ISTAART, and that's the point of the PIAs, right? We want to bring together people who are interested in the vasculature, whatever your interest is. Maybe you might be a preclinical researcher, maybe you work in models of Alzheimer's disease, maybe you work on clinical trials. Like, the point is that we're wanting to, or maybe you want to do all these things, right? By getting everyone together with the Vascular Cognitive Disorders PIA, it kind of allows that opportunity to kind of happen. And I think that's what's really exciting about the Vascular PIA. And I was told to say it's the best PIA, but it is the best PIA.
Well, on that we can debate. No, but I think you already answered actually my next question, like why some of the listeners should join the PIA, and you gave an excellent example of how this can be a very productive part of your life in terms of networking, building career, etc. But maybe also you could mention, like you mentioned all these working groups, and there is a lot of interest in different fields. Are you considering to collaborate in the future with all their peers? For example, I'm the program's chair of the Frontotemporal dementia and related disorders, and I think always the vascular aspect is overlooked in other conditions that is not Alzheimer or vascular dementia, of course. So what can we do as different peers to work together on this field?
That's a really good question. I think, I'm not sure if our PIA has kind of collaborated with other peers previously. I think they may have. But yeah, you're right. The only way we kind of can figure new things out is by working with people who aren't in your research area. And I think the way that other groups could work together is just bringing the different expertise. Like for you guys, you're like imaging and things like that. Or people in the vascular PIA may not know about specific imaging methods, and it's kind of using our understanding of the vasculature and how you can you image it and things like that. I think that's really exciting. But if nobody wants to collaborate, we could chat about collaborating. Because I think I think our group is very collaborative, and I think there's definitely scope to collaborate with many different peers, especially with imaging and the vasculature. It makes sense, right? We want to see kind of what's happening on those vessels. It's just figuring out how, like, the specific methods that may be the best for that, or the best for the specific vessels you're looking at. Because obviously different vessels in the body might be harder to see. Like the surface vessels might be super easy to image, whereas some of those really small capillaries might be a bit harder to image. And it's kind of making sure that the different expertise from the different groups and the different peers kind of talk to each other and can help maybe do that, I guess.
And like maybe following on that, if someone is listening and would like to look at data out there, like of course now there are also everyone is interested in big data. There are some networks that you'd suggest them to look at, like some like also beyond the PIA, like some big studies that people can access, apply for data and collaborations.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't actually know any major big ones off the top of my head. But I do know that there's definitely, I know a lot of people who do the sort of big data research, they do put it into like open repositories. So like maybe going on like Open Science Framework, they might have some information on things like that. Because the point of doing the big data is you kind of want people to use the data. I know of like the Brain Biobank and things like that. And they don't just collect information about the brain, they have lots of other different things that they've collected, and people are able to like correlate that. They have imaging, I think they have imaging. And there's a lot for imaging, and I think I'm pretty sure there are some for the vasculature, but like I say, I'm not sure of them off the top of my head, but within the big ones they probably have information on the vasculature. They might do like heart scans, because I'm interested in like heart disease and atherosclerosis. I know a lot of these different big data sort of big data things, I don't know the word for them. They do maybe scans of like the heart, so you can look at kind of like plaque load and things like that, and you're able to like correlate that with like blood pressure, or like do people take hypertensive medication and things like that. So there's these massive data sets. There's a lot that can be done with them, and I think we're only just kind of looking at the tip of the iceberg with them. So there's definitely loads more we can do with them, which is really exciting. I think as an early career researcher, it makes it more of an exciting field.
And there could be another collaboration with one of the interviewee of this series, Imre from the Artificial Intelligence PIA. So there is a lot of cross-matching between PIAs. Well, excellent. I think we are reaching the end of this podcast. Thank you so much to Beth for taking the time to join us today. And good luck for your Viva. You'll be brilliant, I'm sure. And thank you everyone for listening. You can find profiles on myself and my brilliant guests, and information on how to become involved in ISTAART on our website at dementiaresearch.nih.ac.uk, and also at www.org ISTAART. There is a link in the show notes here. And I'm Maura, and you have been listening to the Relay podcast from Dementia Researcher and the Alzheimer Association. We'll be back tomorrow, so hit subscribe on the YouTube or your favorite podcast app to ensure you don't miss any of the episodes. Thank you so much, Beth. Thank you, everyone.
Brought to you by dementiaresearcher.nih.ac.uk in association with Alzheimer's Research UK, Alzheimer's Society, Race Against Dementia, and the Alzheimer's Association, bringing you research, news, career tips, and support.